Hello and welcome to another video. Now, hope you're doing absolutely great. One thing that comes up all the time in holiday baking is candied citrus peel. Orange, lemon, lime, that sort of thing. Now, you can buy this, but it doesn't taste nearly as good as if you make it, and it's super easy to make anyway. So, I spent some time making candied orange peel. I used it for the Stollen video that will be coming out shortly. Some of the things that you read about how to do it and implications of doing things differently is somewhat incorrect. So we're going to correct some misunderstandings, and we will go ahead and discuss how to make the best candied citrus peel you can possibly make. So, ingredients are very simple. Citrus fruit. Obviously, can't get citrus peel without citrus fruit. I hope you know that. And of course, sugar. Water. Those are the only three ingredients that we have. Now, you can do this with orange peels. For the Stollen, I did it with orange, lemon, and lime. You can also do it with grapefruit, but grapefruit would be pretty tricky. So my recommendation is start with lemon and orange and branch out then to limes, grapefruit, and things like that. So, that being said, next step will be to peel the oranges. So, for brevity's sake, I'm going to just do one orange. Basically, you slice off the very ends and you set the orange on its side. From here, it makes more sense to use a paring knife, and you're going to score the fruit vertically, periodically, in strips, like this. And I'll come back to doing that myself. The next step is we're going to take our fingers and we're going to pull the peel off there. Now, if you look at the anatomy of a peel here, this is actually really important. You'll note that there's a zest part out here and there's this white pith. Now, a lot of places will tell you that the white pith is bitter. Don't believe them. Most of the bitterness is actually in the zest, and so you need to be thinking about these sorts of things as you're looking at figuring out how many changes of water to use. So for something like orange, I would say 2 changes of water. For lemon, you're probably fine with 1, same with limes. For grapefruit, maybe you need 3 or 4, but grapefruits are much more bitter. Sometimes people also like on grapefruits, this membrane here is also very bitter, but that's not the case on most other citrus fruits. So once we're done with this, we're going to slice them in, pieces that are about 5 millimeters thick. It's about 1/4 of an inch, and that way we'll have pieces about like this. So I'll come back when I'm done with all of that, and we'll go ahead and get started on the next piece. So now I have peeled these 7 oranges, as I mentioned, and I'm going to put the peels in this pot. The next step is I'm going to cover them with water, and I'll put them on to boil. So we will turn the stove onto high, and we will bring these to a boil. Once they boil, we'll turn it down to maybe a 5 or a 3, and just let them boil for about 10 minutes. And once that's done, then we'll change the water once or twice before we go into the actual candying process. So let's go ahead and I'll come back once this is boiling. So this is just about to boil. I'll be back after it's been boiling for 10 or 15 minutes and I'm ready to strain it. And I will strain it through a fine mesh strainer. Then we'll basically change the water and boil it again. And then once that's done, then we'll be ready for the actual candying process. So now we're going to basically pour this off. Now the important thing here is that the number of changes of water you run this through really depends on how sort of, it's basically the way in which you control the strength of the flavor. And the problem is that orange zest can be a bit bitter. So we want to reduce that intensity down to a point where it actually works in the candying process. So we're going to run this under one more change of water. And then basically that's all. So this goes back in the pan. And then we just add water again. And there's no real point in measuring it at this point, but more water is better because it will dilute the zest better. Then we'll bring this back to a boil, repeat, and we'll be back. So now after the second boiling, it's time to start the candying process. With orange, at least I do 2 boilings. So what I'm going to do is I will add my sugar, and it's 2 parts sugar to 1 part water. A simple syrup is 1 part sugar and 1 part water. So this will be a lot thicker. And basically I pour the sugar on top, then I add the water, and then I am going to turn up the heat perhaps to 7 or so, make sure all this gets dissolved, and then I'll make sure all of this gets submerged. And we're going to go ahead and simmer this for about 45 minutes. It'll pull a lot of water out of the it'll pull a lot of water out of the peels. And as I say, you know, if you are used to this coming out too bitter, then just simply do another boiling. But you really want some of this pith on it, because if you don't, it's going to be really dry and leathery. So you know, we'll go ahead and go with that. And I'll be back in about 45 minutes to take them out. Now, a lot of people say toss with sugar right away, but I've actually found that doesn't work very well. We'll talk about what to do instead. So now it's been about 45 minutes, and this has cooked down quite a bit. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to take a slotted spoon or something similar like the spider, and we're just going to pull all of the pieces of orange peel out of the liquid here. Now, some tutorials I've seen suggest tossing everything in sugar at this point. I've had very bad luck with that because this is very, very wet. And so basically you end up with a lot of very wet sugar and a very thick sugar casing around these. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to let them cool down and partially crystallize, and then we might toss them with sugar if we need to at that point. So in this case, I have a handy spider here. This is what we call a spider, and this works really super well. So just going to grab some and put them in the dish. If we grab more, we'll let it drain for a bit, put it in the dish, and then I'll come back tomorrow for the taste test. I'm not going to do a taste test today because we kind of need to let everything crystallize a bit. My plan is to use these in mince pies. Now, the liquid that's left over has a wonderful bit of orange flavor in it. The only problem is it's way too thick to be a simple syrup. So if we just put this in a jar, it's going to crystallize. But if we want to keep a nice orange syrup, perhaps for flavoring drinks or other things with, we're going to add some more water. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to add half as much water as I added before. And stir this up. And this can then be saved as simple syrup. So I will be back tomorrow. There's one more piece of peel in there for the taste test. And I want to make one more note here. You can see here the amount of pith on here. You really want pith in these candied peels because that regulates the moisture as they dry up. Without the pith, you end up with something that's super dry and leathery. With the pith, you end up with something that's much more manageable. So we're going to let these cool down and crystallize. I'll pour this aside as a simple syrup or a orange syrup. I think we're done with this preparation. We'll just come back later for a taste test. So here are the candied citrus peels. I did toss them with sugar about 4 hours after I took them out of the syrup. If you do it too soon, it's hard, it makes a mess. So wait maybe 4 or 5 hours. That's an optional step. You could also wait until they're kind of gooey and maybe put them in a plastic bag and put them in the refrigerator. But this helps them stay separated and easy to work with. So they'll take another day or so to dry, and then they'll be ready to use. We're going to go, as I said, we're going to go ahead and use these in mince pies. And now for the taste test. So it's really quite extraordinary. These taste very much like you would expect like orange gummies to taste like. With a very similar texture, just the crusting of sugar on the outside. But this is almost entirely natural. Well, it is entirely natural. It's just orange peel, sugar, and water. And while the one I just tasted is just a little bit bitter, that bitterness will fade away over the next day or so. And these will be perfect for baking, pies, cakes, you name it. And so I'm really excited about making mince pies with this next week. Now, if you like this sort of content, I strongly suggest that you comment, like, and subscribe. And in the subscription button, there's a little drop down where you can select notification settings. And if you select all notifications, the little bell, and you select that, then you'll get a notification every time one of my videos comes out. So if you like this content, suggest you do that. Of course, feel free to share. But besides that, just want to say thank you very much for watching. Bon appetit, happy baking, and see you next week.